This is Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort, and thanks for joining us on another episode, diving deep into the world of public transportation, talking to some of its most distinguished leaders. Today we speak with Dwight Ferrell. He's the general manager of SMART in Southeastern Michigan. Dwight is a distinguished leader in public transportation. He went from being a bus operator in Dallas to a manager in the early days of Dallas DART, and then rose through the ranks to lead agencies in Atlanta, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Houston, and Cincinnati. He's currently serving as general manager of the Suburban Mobility Authority for Regional Transportation, or SMART, in Southeast Michigan near Detroit. SMART serves Macomb and Oakland counties, parts of Wayne County, and the city of Detroit. Dwight's got extensive experience in strategic transportation, leadership, and technology. And we tap into some of those insights and wisdom on today's episode. We dive deep into and pull some lessons from SMART's recent project providing transportation for the NFL draft that was recently held in Detroit. That's the National Football League draft. And we spend the last half of the podcast talking to Dwight about nuggets of wisdom that he's gleaned from his career of over 30 years in the public transportation industry. Some really keen career insights that I know you'll enjoy. Stick around for the entire episode here on Transit Unplugged. Great to be with my good friend Dwight Ferrell today on the podcast. Dwight, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's jump into the NFL draft. Tell us about that and what your all's role was there this year.
We saw this as an opportunity to be able to let people experience it. And there's no way there's enough parking in downtown Detroit that could accommodate all of those. So we were asked, and we were working on it anyway, and we provided shuttle service from basically 12 hours a day from 11 different locations to downtown. And so then we took them to a couple of people mover spots, and then they could use the people mover in order to be able to circulate around the city. So it was an integrated effort between everybody in order to be able to provide the service. And as you know, it was record breaking in terms of population. So we carry just under 30,000 people in those Thursday, Friday, Saturday of the draft.
Dwight, what was some of the initial challenges that you expected, and how did they play out?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we wanted to make sure of is that we could run our regular service and still do that, considering that we are like a lot of transit agencies who are struggling for bus operating. You know, one of the things that's unique about Detroit, and one of the things we're trying to determine how we can deal with and how we can be part of a solution long-term, is there are 3 stadiums within 3 blocks of each other in downtown Detroit.
Wow. Football, baseball, and what's the other one?
The basketball and hockey arena. The football stadium and the baseball stadium are literally across the street from one another. And I'm talking like a 3-lane street.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the other side of the freeway. About 2 blocks from that is Little Caesars Arena, where the hockey team plays the Detroit Red Wings. And
yeah. They're very big right now.
Everything is down there.
And you guys have to stay on top of that, right?
We're putting forth a big effort to increase the number of bus operators that we have, because ultimately what I'd like to be able to do is provide the same kind of service like we provided during the NFL draft on certain game days.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah. Are there a couple tidbits you could share with us about the lessons and what you'd like to bring over? I mean, that could be helpful for other cities too.
Well, again, first and foremost is, it's always better to undercommit and overdeliver. That's first and foremost. Managing expectations, especially now, is absolutely critical. The staffing issue is probably the biggest issue that I think in transit right now, to be able to get enough bodies in order to be able to deliver reliable service. And, having parking is, and where you're going to do park and ride, there are places, that have got rail stations where they can have buses and, people can park there and then, take an express bus to wherever the location is and all of that. We don't have that here. So, finding whether it's a shopping center or a grocery store, or any other kind of big box kind of place where you can lease space to be able to do something on those select occasions is something that, before you even talk about this, if you can't get that done, you can't carry people if they don't have a place to park.
Yeah, that's right. And what about technology, Dwight? Did you all use any kind of special technology to communicate with, the public, et cetera?
Well, obviously, like everybody else, social media was a big part of what huge part of what we did. So we use more social media than anything else.
Okay.
But technology is going to be a much larger part of what we do going forward as we prepare to expand microtransit and provide better real-time information to customers. I look at it this way. I may run service every hour, but if I know that the bus is going to come at that time frame and I can see it, much like when I'm waiting on Uber or Lyft, I know I don't have to make my walk to the bus stop until the right time. So we're going to invest a lot in that area. In fact, we're retained an organization that's working on the development of a specification for an RFP for an app we're going to put out later this year. And what we're looking to do is to have the app create a seamless mobility option. So whether it's Uber, Lyft, a bike, DDOT, or some other form or our own microtransit, we want to be able to show you a way to be able to get there so that you can pay and be done and get where you need to get to. So for us, ridership obviously is always important, but to the extent that we can provide a more robust transit system with better service, it makes our region much more attractive to attract jobs, to retain jobs. Because really, that's what. Can you imagine what Paris and London would be without public transportation?
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah. Yep.
You're live.
Yes, it would be. Absolutely.
So, not to mention the whole environmental impacts and all the other kinds of things that are associated with it. But Paul, I'm sure you know this, but I want to make sure that your listeners get this. 60% of the population in the United States is in 3 generations, X, millennial, and Z. All the studies show that people are not getting a driver's license and early.
That's right.
There are some people, so I don't know if you have children or not.
I do.
My youngest son has taken more trips than I have, and he's 32 years old.
Wow.
Because how people want to live their lives is very. I have a young lady that works for me, and I think you've even talked to Katie. Katie is married, 2 kids, from 1 car, by choice. And so when you think about, there are more of those 3 generations than there are baby boomers, and how they think is very different. So people want public transit. About Amazon's HQ too. If you didn't have a robust transit system, they weren't even talking to you.
That's true. That was a baseline requirement.
It was a baseline requirement. I was on a plane recently, and a gentleman I was sitting next to was saying that he lives in Cincinnati, and when his son graduates, he wants to move to another place. But top of his list is transit. And I said, why? He says, my wife doesn't drive, nor does she wish to.
Wow.
So having public transportation, microtransit, Uber, Lyft, and what have you. And if you can't get to, as an industry, being in Paris and London recently just validated in my own mind. I was in those 2 countries, 2 cities for 10 days. I never used cash and never took out a credit card. I paid for everything on my phone, everything. Restaurant, whatever. It was all contactless. Now, for the industry as a whole, we've got to get to some people's cell phone. We have to. I mean, think about it, Paul. You can, from your phone right now, go to London and never use B. You can buy your ticket from an app, whatever airline. Shoot.
It's true, yeah. That's what I do most of the time, yeah.
I'm saying you can pay for it. When you get there, I'm going to take out my app and I'm going to use Uber.
Yep.
Or I'm going to.
So you had a 10-day cashless trip. Everything, not even a credit card, everything on the phone.
Everything on the phone.
Yeah. And why aren't we there in public transit is your point, right?
We're looking for, as part of the app deployment, what kind of equipment do we need on a vehicle to allow you to be able to do that? And really also, there's always this conversation about people who are unbanked.
Yes.
If you type into Google right now, prepaid credit card, prepaid debit card, you'll get 20. And so they have all kinds of ways for which you to reload them. So as an industry, we've got to get caught up to the fact that the world is shifting and people have not recognized, I don't care where you're on the socioeconomic strata, people have been forced to shift if they want to do business. So why aren't we?
Lagging behind when we really should be out front in some of these things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good stuff, Dwight. It reminds me of, I just had a book come out, and my chapter's about the future of leaders in this industry. And one of them is to adapt and to stay current, no matter what your age. And that's what you're doing, isn't it? You got to stay up, man. Yeah.
When I was in Cincinnati, I had something called the Millennial Count. Everybody who was on there, with the exception of a couple of people, was a millennial age person. I learned so much from that. So when you think about even advertising these days, when you and I were coming up, advertising was quantitative. It had some improvement that could be measured.
Yes.
Not more. It's how does it make you feel? So if you're a leader, and if you're not tuned into what the three largest demographics out there are looking for, and you're not singing from that hymn book, that doesn't mean that, older generations are not important, but those are the ones that are going to be paying for this stuff long term. And they want a very different view than the one than we had. I mean, the quality of life for them is taking trips and a whole bunch of other things that we didn't think about.
And so as public transit agencies contemplate what their future services are, they need your wisdom, and your advice is we need to make sure we're focused on the younger generation, what their needs are.
And the last thing is the pandemic changed everything.
That's right. Yep.
It's not about AM and PM rush hour. It's about the service throughout the day. We've done a study and found that most people in this region don't go more than about 6 or 7 mile radius from where they live. So how do I circulate you around that 6 or 7 miles in your area? Now, that doesn't mean that there are people who are making longer trips, don't get me wrong. But how do I do that? Now, you and I have been here around this for a long time. That's unheard of from when you and I were started. Completely.
Other than the app, maybe share with us a few of the other big plans you have coming up for the service?
There's something else that we're going to do. It may not seem innovative, but we're looking at more ways to better communicate with our employees through apps. And so we're looking at how to deploy that. We're trying to explore wellness programs. This isn't necessarily something that the customer sees directly, but a healthier work environment, healthier employees mean more reliable service as well. We have 4 unions. This year, we have successfully negotiated with 3 of them. We've given our employees what is often known to be the highest paid in the state of Michigan.
Wow.
Which makes us very competitive for the paratransit and fixed route bus service and all of that. We're going to be looking for vice president of program and project management so that we can be better prepared to execute on our capital budget so that we can provide a better product.
Yeah.
We created, since I've been here, a vice president of safety and training, because what we're looking at is if the money has to go for service and salary. If it's not going for that, then what's the perk?
Yes.
So those are just some of the things. We have an HR, we're going to be awarding the contract for HR consulting because our product is service. It can't be done without human beings.
That's right.
And so we recognize the need to really take a look at our entire human capital program, for lack of a better term. And so we're going to be awarding a contract to somebody within the next couple of months that's going to completely revamp our HR process. And we're looking at the changes that we made in our contracts. Our proposals have been about attracting the next generation of employees. What attracted me to a job in 1980 doesn't attract people today. And the work rules that were in place in 1980, some of them are actually illegal today. So
you got to stay up with the times.
So our big push really is people and getting off of them. We've been between 100 and 150 operators short since before I got here. The last board meeting we reported we were about 65 operators short. That's the lowest we've been in forever.
Wow.
We're looking at what can make the job attractive. How can we be flexible? There's a big push out there for part-time operators. I'm also wanting to figure out how we can increase the number of women who work in the space, not just as bus operators, but mechanics and everything else.
Yeah. You talk about the next generation, and that's actually how I wanted to wrap up. You're, along with me, one of the guys who's been doing this for more than 30 years. And
yes,
We've known each other off and on through the years. And to me, you're one of the most wise men in our industry with the experience you've had. And I was hoping you could just share, I know I didn't tell you to prepare for this, but maybe you could just share some lessons as we close out, some thoughts for the next generation of leadership, anything like that.
Sure. The book that that was recommended to me by Rick Simonetta 25 years ago. The book is called The 5 Temptations of the CEO by Patrick Lencioni. Now, if it takes you more than really 2 nights to read this book, you really have a problem. But it's interesting for transit people because the story is told on a BART train.
Ah.
And so the 5 temptations are things that leaders are tempted to do instead of doing. I don't want to spoil the book for people because I'm not getting a commission for this. But that book that changed my complete viewpoint about leadership. And so what I would tell people, young people, is leadership at its core is getting things done through others. I don't drive a bus. I don't fix people. I don't write checks. I don't do any of those. But you have to be able to engage and motivate your team members to do that. How we reward and recognize employee, absolutely essential. If people don't feel appreciated, they're not going to stay. So it's not always about the money. Matter of fact, more often than not, it's not about the money.
That's right.
And the last thing I'll say is actually 2 things. I got to this place because of different bad things that happened along the way. I ended up meeting the pastor that I told you about because my first wife and I got divorced. She went to his church. I went, she left, I stayed. My career would have been completely different had that not taken place.
Interesting.
So I try to, my mother was the biggest influence in my life. And my mother would say to me, God puts you in a position to do what only you can do. And when you do that, there's a blessing. Well, that's happened to me on more than one occasion, but for me to get in the position to do what he wanted me to do was not fun. And so I would tell anybody that, as a leader, people will say, oh, Transit CEO, I want to be one of those. Nope. But are you prepared to deal with the stuff, your life not being your own?
That's good.
That, your life, there's nothing off limit. I've had people question when my mother was alive, how often I went to see her.
Yep. Everything, right? Yeah. Your life is an open book, isn't it? When you're in that position.
Yeah. And so are you prepared for that? And then the last thing I will say, if you don't have a therapist, shame on me. Because when you're a leader in the transit space, not only do you have your family that you have to contend with and deal with, but you also have your work family. And so I don't care whether you got 800 employees or 8,000 employees, they're looking to you to lead them.
Great stuff, Dwight. See? Yeah. So you proved me right. One of the wise elders of our business.
You just can't take it lightly. And so I don't care what your religion is. It doesn't really matter. If you have one, you believe that God or whoever that is reward you for doing something. Well, with that comes an awesome responsibility, kind of like that Spider-Man thing.
That's right. Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility. And you got to always be willing to learn, because when you stop learning, you're dead. I mean, look at you. I think the last time I saw you, this is to show you just how funny this is. The last time I saw you, I was on a panel that you were doing at a APTA Expo.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Well, my deputy general manager, Tiffany Gunter, was on that same panel.
I love Tiffany. She's great.
Right. And so who would have thought that
where the river of life takes us, right?
Yeah. So, so your connections, your contact, you never know who's watching you. I'm not going to go into the details, but I have 2 jobs that came to me because somebody was watching. These were not jobs I was seeking. Somebody was watching and said, okay, I want you to use it.
So that's a good admonition to mid-level and younger leaders who want to move up. The old saying about integrity, doing what's right when you think no one's looking. Sometimes
Absolutely.
They are, and sometimes it can lead to great things or not so if you're not behaving correctly.
Yeah. Well, you don't know who's looking. And, at times when I was at my lowest, I remember not getting a job and not happy about it. And then I got a call from somebody completely out of the blue that says, I think you would be good at this. And 11 months later, that's what I was doing.
Yeah. It's amazing
So,
where the river of life takes us, isn't it?
absolutely. I mean, look at you. Did you think you would be doing this?
No, never going to do it. Yep, it's something
So,
else. I figured I'd be governor, not doing podcasts, but
no,
worked out good. Yeah,
no. But at the end, do you love what you're doing?
I do. Yeah, very happy. Feel very blessed, like you do, and able to share and shine the light on great people like you and the lessons you've learned to help our industry. I think. Well, Dwight Ferrell, thanks for being our guest today on Transit Unplugged. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to continue to watch the improvements you make there in the Detroit area for your transit system and the wisdom that you provided for our whole industry. We hope that you keep giving it.
I appreciate it. I want to say I thank you for reaching out and giving me and Smart this opportunity to be able to talk about the things that are going on here in Southeast Michigan and to talk about this great organization. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged. Hi, I'm Tress Hussey, editor of Transit Unplugged, and a special thanks to our guest, Dwight Ferrell, GM of Smart, for his really insightful wisdom into building your career in transit and the technologies all transit agencies should be looking at. Now, coming up next week, we have another special episode, and this time it's from Metro Magazine and Metrospectives. Paul and Metrospectives host Alex Roman are joined by Davey Kim to talk about Paul's book, The New Future of Public Transportation, and Davey's chapter in the book. We know you like Transit Unplugged, the podcast, but have you watched Transit Unplugged TV lately? We have had some amazing episodes so far this year, and this month it's Memphis, Tennessee that's in the spotlight. Make sure you tune in and learn everything about this amazing city that has a lot to offer for mobility, and not to mention the birthplace of rock and roll. Transit Unplugged is brought to you by Modaxo. At Modaxo, we're passionate about moving the world's people. And at Transit Unplugged, we're passionate about telling those stories. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.